I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me. And what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan your own hands can land your own.
Man, feeling well, man.
What's your name?
My name is Cardi Cornish.
And you a legend?
I'm a legend.
You're a legend here in Baltimore City. Where we at right now?
We live in the 17, Pennsylvania Avenue. The legendary Pennsylvania Avenue.
Man, the last time I saw you here, you were doing something just across the street here. What were you doing?
Oh, yeah, I had some food left over from an event. We brung it out. We fed a couple of people, man.
Why you do that?
Nice soul food. Huh?
Why you do that?
Man, the love that God has shown me in Christ, man, it overflows. That's how it overflows.
Yes, sir.
We got more than we can use.
Already was high within San Antonio, Winchester community, but the age group is getting younger. Children under the age of 18 being murdered in San Antonio has a high peak right now. So our goal is to catch the children.
He's going hard, man. He's going hard on that man today.
So what do you think, Mr. Mayor? You got manufacturing right here, helping our young people despite all of the challenges in the city of Baltimore, right here on North Avenue.
No, it's really about the growth. Just knowing being there when they were down in Fort Covington and seeing how far it's grown. Like you said earlier, like getting the Sorbet, where we got the Sorbet at the beginning, but now being able to, when I'm at Camden Yards, get it, or anytime I'm down at Harbor Place to get it, and folks to not even know, but they gonna know now that like this is coming from young people in West Baltimore, right there in West Baltimore on North Avenue, where they think nothing great comes from, but they can see it with the young people.
If you work for it, it's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they
Here on the Miami, Mississippi, down right there, French Forward, Memphis. A beautiful town, just leaving Algiers, which is an update 10 years since Katrina. The news before. All right, y'all, this is what I came to New York for. Besides the Black Wall Street Awards, we're going ahead and get some of this real good jerk chicken. Johnny Glover, out.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, entered the winner for the long haul, baby. We have our guest with us today, Mr. Richard Deshay Elliott. Good morning.
Good morning, Donnie. Good morning, Byron.
And Mr. Byron Deese. Good morning, Byron.
Good morning. Good morning, brothers.
Richard, take it off mute. It's a little confusing. You see it on mute.
Okay.
You got a little delay down. How we doing today?
Doing good.
All right. Richard, a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Mm-hmm. So, hi, I'm Richard Elliott. I'm a writer with the Washington Informer and Baynet. I focus on stories relating to Prince George's County primarily, but the state of Maryland as a whole. I also occasionally write about sports and business. I've known Mr. Glover for several years, and I have to strongly commend him for all he's done to archive Black history, not just in the state of Maryland, not just in the city of Baltimore, but across the country. And I encourage everybody to buy and read his book.
That's good stuff. Byron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning, everybody. Byron Deese, wealth manager with Glass Jacobson Wealth Advisors, founder of the Dream Makers Network, and work so much with providing Black wealth for business owners throughout the country, particularly in the Maryland market. And I think it's just awesome to be able to connect with folks like Doni and this particular show and this network to address the issues associated with Black folks, Black Marylanders, Black across the board. Yeah, and so it's always exciting to connect the dots here.
Richard, adjust your camera a little bit. You're like at the bottom of the camera. You got a full screen, yeah.
Hold on. It's on a charger so it doesn't die.
Oh, okay.
How's
Yeah,
how's this? I'll just
where
hold
are
it.
you? In your closet?
In the closet.
No, Donnie, my room is just full of some of the best clothes you've ever seen. I have them all organized on racks.
Well, let's talk about clothes. Where are the best clothes and best shopping in Prince George's County?
So, in my honest opinion, if you're trying to do the mall walkthrough experience, my favorite mall to visit in Prince George's now is probably Greenbelt Mall. Why do I like Greenbelt Mall? When we were younger, we made fun of it. Number one, the whole mall smells like pretzels. Number two, there's still a movie theater there, and movie theaters are becoming a unfortunate relic of the past. And when Byron, I'm sure you know this, when movie theaters close down, there's not much you can convert them into, basically, except for housing and warehouses. Like they're so big and they're so specialized that the corpse of theaters are now being bought up by national real estate. Final reason I like Greenbelt Mall, they have very, very good pizza. Do I buy clothes there? No, I buy my clothes on eBay, Donnie. It's cheaper. You get better selection.
Okay. All right. Now that we got that out the way. So I wanted to start with you, Richard. You had to give you have an update to give us regarding Prince George's County politics.
Yes.
And just so you know, the audio isn't that great. It's like you're on 50%.
All right. Is this better?
Byron, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I was covering up the speakers. That might have been the issue. All right, so in Prince George's County, in the at-large race, the primary will be held on August the 6th. County Council Chair, former delegate Jolene Ivey officially declared her candidacy on about the June the 17th or so. In very, very late June, excuse me. So she was the first candidate to declare that she is running in the race. I did an exclusive interview with her that I can bring up on my second phone once you start talking to Mr. Deese. Walla Bligay, County Councilwoman Walla Bligay, announced her interest in the race via email yesterday morning at about 9 o'clock. Also, the clerk of court, Mahasan El Amin, is running. She made a website and is holding an event, or held an event this week to announce. And South County advocate Tamara Davis Brown, who's from the 9th Councilmanic District, she is also running. So there's at least 4 candidates who have very serious bases of support.
So Jolene Ivey, isn't she already in office?
Yes, she is. No, she's in office. She's currently on the county council serving in District 5, and she's the chair. She's been the chair for a couple of months. So let me bring up
and we're talking about replacing
council member.
We're talking about
former council member Mel Franklin, who resigned after the state prosecutor alleged that he stole over $125,000 in campaign funds for personal expenses. I'm just going to say personal expenses. I'm trying to bring up the Jolene article. So
Jolene obviously. Okay, so look, Jolene is already on the council, but she wants Franklin's seat.
Yes.
I don't understand why.
So with the term limits of the council, she would be term limited anyway. She is ineligible to run for re-elect in her district regardless. I believe that separate from this race, or separate from the seat becoming vacant, I presumed that she was going to run for the at-large in the upcoming election, where there would have been 2 seats. Even after this election is held, the other at-large seat held by Councilmember Calvin Hawkins is also going to be term limited, and therefore some person who probably is running in this special is going to run for that seat and probably win that seat.
Okay, and then Walla Bligay ran before in the state race?
Yes, 1 second. I have to switch headphones over. apologize for that. So Walla Bligay serves on the county council in District 6. She has previously run for state delegate in District 25. She is actively serving. Previously, she served as the county council vice chair.
Okay. Who's your favorite to win?
No comment.
Who has the best shot at winning? Would you say Jolene Ivy is the most popular name?
I think that the best shot of winning is most likely Jolene Ivy for the following reasons. Number one, countywide name recognition. Number two, her husband serves in Congress covering somewhere about more than half of the county. We can just say more than half of the county. This race is also, it's only a month, and it's hard to define yourself for mayor in a small town of 500 in a month. Defining yourself to the whole county in 30 days is prohibitively expensive, and it's very difficult to establish your name, let alone like your brand. Sorry, somebody's calling me, so I'm going to go mute for a second. I'm going to tell them I'm on the radio.
Okay.
You know what's
any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say what's interesting in that regard. Definitely the name recognition aspect plays a huge deal in a short, a race like this. So and you think about the fact that the Ivies from congressional to state, the sons on the state level, and now on the local level with the mom or wife, if you will, it's going to be very difficult for anyone who doesn't already have some level of name recognition or some type of base, if you will, political base, to be able to overcome name recognition in that particular market. Does
the song "It's a Family Affair" does that come to mind?
You could say so. You could say the big three of their family. You have a congressman who has, in part through leadership and guidance offered by Congressman Steny Hoyer and by Congressman Mfume, they've been great helps for Glenn, and he has secured quite a bit of local funding for, among a variety of other things, transit projects, business development, housing development, health care that he's been able to secure while in the Congress. The mother or the wife is now serving as the county council chair. And so far, and this is what she said in the interview I did with her, her biggest accomplishment in this term so far has been plugging the county's $171 million budget hole without raising property taxes and with them adding incentives to hire new firefighters and new police. And the son, Julian, now serves in Annapolis, is in his second term. And in his work on the Appropriations Committee, I'll just say he quietly is a big help for Prince George's.
The interesting part about that, just to add, is, and you have to be careful, but the truth is, in every area that, let's just say in the case of the mom / wife, even if she doesn't have it on her political record, she can stand tall on some of the accomplishments of her son and husband. So it gives them kind of a breadth of things to discuss in any debate, in any topic, anytime she wants to get in front of the people, can highlight collectively, this is what we believe should happen for Prince George's County.
Yeah, it's hard to find a household where there's people who have municipal, local, state, and federal and law experience. That's something you have to usually get at a convention.
That's a great point.
Yeah, they cover all three levels.
For some additional info, Tamara Davis Brown, who ran in District 9 multiple times, almost unseated, you could say the establishment choice, Sidney Harrison, or almost beat him, and almost beat Anthony Muse in a Senate race. She was within 500 votes of beating Anthony Muse, and Anthony Muse has been in public office and in public eye since before I was born in Prince George's County.
So does it speak, Richard, to the onboarding of a whole new generation of elected officials, not just there in Prince George's County, but across the country?
I think so. I think that let's say this special election had been held when the former Senate president was alive. I think that more or less he would just pick the person is going to be. There'd be very little debate, very little public inquiry. There'd be very few people running who have the amount of support they have fractured. Like right now, from my current understanding, none of the senators are supporting any candidate in this race, to my current understanding. Jolene Ivey has the support primarily of municipal officials and a few state officials. But I'd say under previous, political circumstances, the senators were the ones setting the table. And now the senators might be coalescing behind candidates they don't necessarily like, staying out of the race, possibly even considering runs themselves. So just off of the strength of Senate President Miller no longer runs the show single-handedly, in Prince George's, you have a lot more people who can run on their own merits, who can build their own coalitions, who can raise their own money, and who can endorse or not endorse as they deem appropriate.
To my understanding, a lot of people didn't care for Mike Miller.
I have both my...
And of course, the screen would freeze up.
I have my opinion of him when he was alive versus things that I wish he could have done if he had lived a little bit longer. Mike Miller pretty much ran Prince George's politics single-handedly by helping to steer campaign money.
He was a bully. He's not here to defend himself, but Richard, he was a bully.
He was a bully. He pretty much ran the county, and you could even argue the state, effectively through his desires, intents, and wishes. And you could say that held the state back in a myriad of ways, particularly around diversifying the leadership around the state's executives.
Uh-huh.
It took Wes Moore becoming governor.
Plus, he called Baltimore.
Plus, he called Baltimore
a shithouse.
He called Baltimore a shithole in 1983.
We'll never forget. Yeah.
But one thing I will say in
he wasn't
sort of
my
retrospect,
favorite. He was a bully. Joan Carter Conway used to step to him, though. I can tell you that State Senator Joan Carter Conway had a lot of testicular fortitude and stuck it to him.
I heard that he would give her
and that's
flowers
what we need in Annapolis. We need
she
fighters.
Felt assaulted.
When
she felt insulted in Annapolis, Miller would give her flowers to show that he was trying to put an effort forward.
Well, thank you very much. But power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. Byron, I wanted to ask you. Rich, come on, Byron.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight one thing. When I moved to Baltimore in 2004, coming from the South, so coming from Florida and spending time in Alabama, one thing I learned about politics in Maryland, and particularly Democrats, was you had to, because the state is majority Democrat, if you will, you had to really understand. Say it again.
2 to 1.
2 to 1. So you had to really understand the role race played inside the Democratic Party. And one of the first things I saw was when Senator Miller, or former State Senator Miller, came out and what he said about Baltimore. And that was the eye-opening piece to say we have to understand that Black politics, Black Democrats have to be in a position to speak confidently and clearly about the Black agenda within the Democratic Party, and not just snuzzle up and cozy up with folks who blatantly are racist and have racist policies directed toward Baltimore City. And I just gotten here and saw that. And so it's important that we understand that. And I'll say this one more thing, actually. When you think about what the role Maryland has in terms of helping to organize and shape that type of a Black political conversation for the rest of the country, for Black elected officials throughout the country, because it was on your show, Donnie, just last week. I can't remember who said this, but they talked about how Brandon Scott's language and a lot of the things that he talks about isn't the quote unquote platform of the Maryland DNC or the national DNC. And when he talks in any black elected official that's in the Democratic Party who talks about issues related to black folks, right? Which is not at the top of the platform. So you can begin to start a conversation.
I'm not sure I'm following. Are you saying he speaks? Are you saying he speaks more specifically to black issues?
More specifically to black issues. And again, we've all said different things about Brandon, have our own views on Brandon. But when you look at this from a greater black economic perspective,
he has very much been unapologetically black.
That's right.
He says he wants to make Baltimore the blackest city in America. And it is refreshing to hear, because quite often we hear politicians backpedaling.
That's right.
Almost apologetically black.
Apologetically black. And I know a lot of apologists, black apologists out here who think they're doing a good thing for Black America by apologizing for our unapologeticness, if you will. So that's important for us to really have that type of a conversation, because in this day and age, with all that's looming over us right now, we have to find our voice.
So my Morehouse Poly brother here says he questions if PG is now the center of black political power in the state of Maryland. You want to handle that, Richard?
Sure. So I think it's fair to say, it'd be statistically accurate to say that you are not winning the governor's mansion, the comptroller's office, the attorney general's office, any statewide office without winning Prince George's County in the primary. In the case of Governor Moore's primary election, it was rather split because there were so many candidates. But Angela Alsobrooks, she romped her native county in order to win. Let me go to the second part of the question, because that
no.
Oh, my bad.
So do you agree that Prince George's
That's
is
where
the
votes
center?
are. That's where the votes are. That's where the votes are. But in regards to the second point, there has to be understanding and alliance and coalition between Prince George's and Baltimore, because just because Prince George's voters necessarily pick somebody does not necessarily mean they're going to have even the most remote understanding of what's going on in Baltimore City, how to address the problems in Baltimore City. The way many of my county neighbors talk about Baltimore, you think it's Fallujah, even though it's a beautiful, wonderful city that is overwhelmingly safe outside of if you're walking across the street, pretty much. So that said, there has to be, like, that was a problem that the Baker campaign had, I think, particularly in 2018. The Baker campaign thought that going to farmers markets and dumping yard signs in front of vacants equaled a Baltimore campaign. The Jealous campaign knocked doors. And that's maybe the most important point to end with. Baltimore campaigns are structured on voter contact and voter engagement. Prince George's is structured on mail. If you try and adopt the Prince George's only strategy in Baltimore, you're going to underperform.
Okay, Byron, you want to handle that? Do you think Prince George's County is the center of black political power in the state of Maryland?
It's hard to say the center.
I wouldn't say the center either.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say the center either.
Because I would say, because of the governor's focus on Baltimore, on lifting the state through Baltimore. He almost on a daily basis highlights that Maryland is only good as its largest city. And so with that respect, I think that all roads lead through Baltimore in terms of now the part of that question that I almost agree with, though, is it comes down to the numbers. And I believe the voter, the actual electorate, if you will, is larger in Prince George's County.
Much larger.
So that
from a black perspective.
From a black perspective. So from that respect, Yes, because the numbers are there. So you can't dance around Prince George's County and think you're going to win a statewide election. You cannot do that. And I'm glad you said, as Richard earlier, is the fact that it's so important to understand the electorate, even though there's a large black population in both Baltimore and Prince George's County, but the electorate is different. The needs are different. The issues are different. What folks are crying for is different. And so you have to be unique. You have to understand exactly what each demographic is looking for, and can't just say, "Oh, this is the black folks. So here's what I know what you want," just like Trump's approach, if you will. But that's another story.
So
let me can I rebound off that real quick?
Okay.
Byron, I like what you said. Wes has elevated Baltimore. He has made Baltimore the central place to focus on, which is very well needed after former Governor Hogan disregarded the city at every opportunity. Right. I'd say the votes between Baltimore City, Baltimore County, you could even throw Anne Arundel into that mix, maybe even Hartford into that mix. I think that comparing sort of the black Baltimore metropolitan region from basically Annapolis to Route 40 in Hartford, it's probably a similar number of voters as there are in Prince George's. Take that entire area.
Me my thoughts on it.
Go for it.
When you look at the history of Prince George's County politics, it was Baltimore state elected officials who helped nurture some of your first elected officials in Baltimore, in Prince George's County. Now, Tommy Broadwater wasn't the first state. He was the first black state senator, right, Richard?
Yeah.
But there was another person who was like the first delegate.
Arthur King.
One more time, I can't hear you.
Delegate Arthur King.
Arthur King. So Baltimore has been historically, sort of a mentor to Prince George's County, simply because Baltimore at the time was more of an urban center. When you look at, I see them as two wheels on an axis, Baltimore, Prince George's, particularly when you look at the election of Robert Ehrlich and Michael Steele. That was Baltimore, Prince George's County on the same page. Yeah. And that was 2002. And then in 2014, when you saw the Hogan-Rutherford, the second Republican gubernatorial ticket in since 02 to 06. Mm-hmm. And again, Baltimore and Prince George's were both on the same page. The reason I can't say Prince George's is the center, and the reason I say they're both, while Prince George's has the numbers, what does Baltimore have in the political realm that Prince George's, I don't think, has?
Political organization and media.
Media. We have media.
Yeah.
Prince George's television stations are based in Washington, D.C., correct?
Yep.
So when the news comes on in D.C., Fox 45, Channel 5, all of that, Fox 5, and the other stations in D.C. was the 9.
WUSA 9 and something 7.
They're going to lead with D.C. stories.
That's a great point.
Baltimore is going to go straight for the jugular and talk about the state of Maryland, beginning in Baltimore City. And with the governor being from Baltimore, it gives Baltimore. So they're equally important, and we need each other. I will say, if you want to win the state of Maryland, you need that axis of power.
Mm-hmm.
The first lady, she's Prince George's County, Don Flythe Moore.
Mm-hmm.
West, Baltimore roots. And I think, often Don Flythe Moore is often overlooked when people don't understand her political history, which precedes the governor's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was in the State House advising Kathleen Kennedy Townsend going back before 2002. So there's a lot of intellectual capital there,
and
there's a lot of synergy. but nobody wins the state of Maryland without Prince George's and Greater Baltimore. It's just not happening. Yeah. Is that good or bad for the future of Baltimore City? I think it's great for Baltimore City because the politicians at least know that we need each other. And it's my hope that the everyday people, the everyday person starts to build, like me from a business perspective. I want to do as many Black Wall Street Awards in Prince George's County and Bowie and Fort Washington and, as possible because, with the Upper Marlboro, because that's important to my news outlet.
Yeah.
It's important to be in Prince George's County. I love Prince George's County ever since I first visited Woodmore. Come on, Byron. I see you smiling.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm thinking about this from a state, general session perspective. That's where a lot of the rifts show up, especially in the Black Caucus between the Baltimore elected officials and the Prince George's County elected officials, particularly as it begins the allocations of where resources will go. Mm-hmm. And when you think about Mike Miller's, tenure, he was we already knew how he felt about Baltimore, so it could not become or stay, I should say, the economic center of the state because under his watch. His objective was, we're going to build out, the National Harbor. We're going to create a true economic center, an alternative to Baltimore, if you will. And he spent the past 20 years doing that. So
does Prince George's County have a port?
No.
Not that I know
Baltimore
of.
has a port.
That's right.
We got BWI 20 minutes down the road. You got the trains that come through. He could say whatever he wants. You can't negate the position that Baltimore's in in the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, but you see what he did over the past 20 years. I mean, the National Harbor is it's his own brainchild, if you will, to create an alternative to Baltimore. And yeah.
It doesn't speak to the limitations of a person when they are tainted by racism.
Yes.
Yes, and
racism is so stupid. It's so anti-business. It's like, as smart as you pretend to be, you're a dummy.
I agree. It hurts everybody.
I see your brain.
Yeah.
My comment, I suppose, the National Harbor is. I agree. I think that the county executives, I would give the credit for designing and executing it. Miller helped fund it. That was Miller's thing the entire time he was there. If Miller was still the state Senate president, Pimlico would probably not be getting money or as much money for its renovation process. If Miller had died earlier in his tenure, the hospital that was recently built in Prince George's County, University of Maryland Medical Center, I think, or blanking on the name, but that facility probably would have received less state funding. That was his game, was making sure that the resources went or didn't go as he decided them. And it has, on top of other state and federal policies, deliberately underfunded, underdeveloped Baltimore, left parts of Baltimore that could have, decades ago been turned into schools or recreational facilities. And I think the main way that you could look at his tenure was, when was the last time that Baltimore had a new recreational facility built prior to the pandemic? Under the later years of his tenure, I think particularly those issues became more prevalent by just looking at the Appropriations Committee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, racism hurts everybody, and it's a shame that it's 2024 and we haven't learned much as a nation at all.
Yeah.
Which brings me to Mr. Donald John Trump and this Project 2025. What are your thoughts on Project 2025, Richard?
It's bad. To go over just some of the parts as quickly as possible, it would replace tens of thousands of civil service employees with political appointees. It would end the Department of Education. It would end the ability for the federal government to back loans to go to college. So this would likely, the current people in school might be the last people who are really able to go to college. That would undoubtedly just destroy higher education in the country as we know it. It would slash environmental regulations. It would slash taxes on the wealthy. It is pretty much a game plan. Wait, hold on one second. I agree with you, Jason. Like, Hogan didn't care about people who didn't vote for him, but he also, even if you don't care about people who don't vote for you, you disrespect everybody in the state who did by underinvesting in the state's economic engine. Prince George's is still in the process of creating jobs and becoming a tourist hub. Baltimore has been a tourist hub and a job hub for a long time that could have had better investment to reduce the problems rather than needed investment to get it up to par. Back to what I said about Project 2025, it is pretty much a game plan for white Christian nationalism and corporatism.
I don't know what a white Christian nationalist is. That sounds like a Klansman to me. I'm just tired of people hiding behind the Bible. You are not a Christian if you have race first. Period. Take your Bible and shove it.
That's right.
It would have dramatically negative impacts on people's access to healthcare and reproductive rights. It is such a bad plan. Such a bad project.
How do you tell a woman what to do with her body? And why are white women falling for this foolishness?
I'm not one, so I can't explain the logic.
How do you vote against your own interests? Roe v. Wade. I mean, who does that? Why don't you just take a gun and put it to your head?
A lot of people vote just based on money, Donnie. That's, I guess, the way I'd put it. A lot of people's main concern is their 401k or their pension or their housing value or their savings or not paying taxes.
Stop calling yourself a Christian if that's your belief. You like money. I get it. But don't come over here telling me about God. But what's the fourth principle of this Project 2025? It's God and free will and living. I don't know who the hell their God is, but I don't want anything to do with them or her.
Yeah.
Let's put it on the table. If this Project 2020, if this whole Trump character wins, that is the roadmap. We need to be aware. Didn't Byron, did Taraji Henson bring attention to this during the BET Awards? Did I hear that correctly?
She tried her best. She tried her best. Were they listening? That's a whole nother conversation. But she tried her best.
We listen to TikTok. We know the latest dance. We know the latest Italian designer. But we don't see the writing on the wall that this red train is coming down the track, ready to put everybody literally back 150 years.
We don't understand it. We've gotten so comfortable.
We want to go to Dubai.
I mean, it's really, unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but it's too late. I hate to say it, but I think it's too late. The fact that especially given the fact that Black people are the true political base of the Democratic Party, but when you listen to Black people talk about the Biden-Harris campaign, it is so fractured. Just about I've seen Black folks talk bad about Kamala. I've seen Black folks talk bad about Joe. They're not organized to support this campaign, which means it's a wrap. I mean, I will be very surprised if Biden wins this election. Extremely surprised, because his political base is fractured.
Well, that means you are getting some gun training and you're getting armed and you're getting some weaponry. Because if they're talking about removing federal agencies and making Donald John Trump a dictator who does not have any fear of prosecution, that sounds like war to me. So you can forget about going to work. You can forget about your kids going to college. It's about to be civil war in these United States. That's what I see.
Two important notes that I have to add for this is, one, this has in effect been part of the Republican Party at the national level's plans since basically the Nixon days.
Yeah.
This is stuff that Ronald Reagan has helped to do. This was stuff that, particularly in 1994, Newt Gingrich contract with America, which I would say was the beginning of the attack on the bureaucracy itself. It's not necessarily that the concept of departments is bad. The people that run the departments are bad, and we need to stop them because they're making the country worse. I would say that the contract with America, Newt Gingrich, 94, and the Republican Revolution really further ingrained that. And now the chips are on the table. They are making it as plain and as clear as possible. This is the goal. It does not matter if Trump loses every state. Republicans in the House and in the Senate, and most importantly, in the judiciary, are going to be pursuing these goals until they undo all the accomplishments of Obama. They undo all the accomplishments of Clinton, I guess that you could include, undo the accomplishments of Carter, and most important for them, undoing the accomplishments of my greatest president, Lyndon Johnson, and then trying to undo Franklin Roosevelt. Those are the goals. Yeah. They've made them clear. Undo everything that's happened over the past 100 years to make America a country that a regular person can want to live in. That's the goal.
What is a regular person? A regular white person?
No. I mean, just anybody who ain't rich. Anybody like this. Even if you're a poor white person, this plan is horrific for you. Do you breathe air in this country? It's bad for you. Do you drink water in this country? It's bad for you.
Why is it bad for white people as well?
I said, do you breathe air in America? This is going to worsen air quality for everybody. Do you drink water in America? It will worsen water quality for everybody. Do you work in America? Your not just your workplace standards, your consumer purchasing standards. The risk of you having God knows what in your food or alcohol or clothing is going to get worse. This is not just a war on blacks, even though it is primarily a war on us. This is a death knell for the poor in this country.
Yeah, when we think about the new Republican Party, the Trump Party, the Republican Party that we knew, the neocons, the Reagan, Republicans, that's over. This is the Trump Party, and and the base of that party is white working class Americans. And the white working class American, all the things that you've outlined that are really good for their health, for their way of life, the whole nine, the economics, that's a secondary factor. The primary factor, because for the white, as we've seen over the past 8 years now, since Donald Trump has been a part of the political scene, is psychology. Can you speak to my ideology, if you will? Can you speak to what's possible for me? It goes back to, Doni, you talk about this a lot, when the fact that you had indentured servants and you had slaves, and both don't have a positive outlook on their economic situation. But if you can say that, well, at least you're better than that slave, at least you're better than the slave from a psychological perspective, that's where we are. It's so many.
That's like the white lady who was eating off of the ground out of my alley had the audacity to call me an effing N-word. Now I'm looking at you eat off of the ground, but white privilege has tainted your brain so much that you don't see that you're living like an animal eating off of the ground. But in her whole world, I'm still an effing N-word, which makes me think of Delegate Marianne Lasanti up in Harford County, who said that Prince George's County is the N-word district.
Let me add
the audacity of racism. I mean, it's beyond me. When we don't know our history, when people don't know their history, they believe whatever's been told to them on television, like Tarzan actually swinging through the jungles of Africa with his shirt off, with a chimpanzee. People actually believe that. And what's unfortunate is when we as a people don't know our history, we don't know that there's skyscrapers in Nairobi, in Accra, in Johannesburg, when we don't realize that some of the most beautiful places in the world include Zanzibar, Madagascar, Seychelles, when we don't know the history of an Egypt, of the Sudan, of Kenya, you know, then we allow other people, a minority. I hate the term minority. We let a minority. Europe is really, really small. We let a minority define us. That blows my mind.
Yeah. I actually want to highlight a couple things. And this, I was listening to our Donahue Peoples the other day. He was on, what's his name?
Charlemagne the God. Donahue is.
So our Donahue Peoples is a African-American, very fair skin, but he is a brother, real estate developer from DC, but now lives in New York.
Who put him on?
Your man.
Byron.
Marion
for life put him on.
Put him on early.
He was he was an appraiser for DC.
As a young man, as a teenager. It's a great American story, definitely a great Black American story. But he said something I thought was very important the other day. And he talked about DEI and the term minority, if you will, also. And he highlighted two things that I think is important for us to, when we're having these conversations about Black issues and Black procurement and all of this, is that Black people and Native Americans are the only demographics in this country where America owes a debt. Everybody else, all the other minority groups, they came here for the shiny city on the hill. They came here, so they owe America. But when you look at procurement policies through minority, the DEI programs, all of the procurement, the MBE programs, they've bunched so many different classifications and ethnic groups in these, where it's just minimizing the intended purpose of these programs. These programs are for Black people. It was a design, it was civil rights leaders created these procurement policies. But now any and everybody—
but these white guys are whining. These white guys who want to stop Fearless Fund from funding Black women businesses. My God, young man, how much privilege do you need? Is it greed? Is it stupidity? Is it jealousy? Or is it fear? Are you fearful? And it takes me back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, 36 square blocks of Black empowerment in the most racist of times. Oh, bless your heart. Prior to the Great Depression. Prior to the Great Depression, the Black community, when left alone, prospered. And we don't know enough about that story, not just in Tulsa, but in Richmond, in Durham, in Weeksville, in New York, in Seneca Village in New York. And East Texas had 500. Byron, how many of us know East Texas had 500 Black towns? And every time we attempted to catch up, you got lynchings, you got massacres, you got Emmett Till, you got, the assassination of Dr. King, the assassination of Malcolm X. And so we've tried the kumbaya approach. The only thing that seems to get their attention is your Eldridge Cleavers, your Angela Davises, when they, pick up that 9, pick up that AK. That's the only thing a bully understands, is when you bust them upside the damn head. And we tried to be kumbaya.
Listen, Booker T. Washington, founder of Tuskegee University, said we can be as separate as the fingers of the hand in all things social, but we can be as powerful as the fist in mutual progress. All things social meant you can have 500 Black communities that are inherently thriving because it's the ecosystem is supporting each other. Black folks get paid, they go spend their money with a Black retailer or a Black business, and let that community continue to grow within itself and strengthen within itself. But who's the threat, right? So we go back to the whole factor of that working class demographic. The white working class were the ones who were coming in to lynch Black folks and who were behind the whole Tulsa riots. So we're still talking about the psychology of the white working class to say these guys are doing better than us, but we still better than them.
How much of an advantage do you need, young man? I gave you 400 years to start. I'm starting 400 years behind, and yet we still catch up. I want to go to brother El Montuzu Osirufu El Martin Il. Islam, brother. Now, how many of us know that before Christopher Columbus came here, Spain and Portugal was dominated by the Moors for 800 years? How many of us know that? That those ships that were coming across the Atlantic would not have had it not been for Moors. And why is that important? Because that's when the transatlantic slave trade began. Spain and Portugal went down to South America. Then ultimately the British came to North America. But for me, in all of that, understanding how this country came to be, how Spain owned Florida, for instance, up until 1831. There's so many influences, but the black man has always been here, long before Columbus. We had been traveling the ocean. And so I say that because I remember some years back, I was told by a young lady, oh, this is a white man's world. What do you think of that, Richard?
I disagree. My world, and I'm living in it. And I want to respond to Jason's question or Jason's statement earlier saying that there's a boogeyman, but that Congress is intended to be what you just said. I agree. Because of a Virginia ruling, you can't describe the ethnic group that is designed to get the benefit of public policy legislation, which is
Stop whining and play black people. Stop whining and pay black people the debt that's owed. Stop whining. Stop being afraid. Your daughters are already dating black men. I don't know what you're afraid of.
Big time. That ship has sailed.
He says something about Congress supposed to be checks and balances.
That's right.
Congress is supposed to be checks and balances, but that also assumes that, again, following some of the other stuff that the founding fathers put in their documents, that there wouldn't be a king, that there'd be people who are accountable to men and not just ideas, that there would be separate powers among all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
But when you have a Congress where, in effect, Republicans would say that Tuesday is Wednesday if it would help them get things done, and where Democrats would say, you're right, in fact, it is Wednesday, simply so that they can get on to the next motion. The fact that the Democratic Party did not take Donald Trump and a lot of his accomplishments to damn near a war crimes tribunal, a federal court, over January 6th. That was a coup. That was an attempted coup. The people
in any other country, they would have put a bullet straight to his head.
I'm not going to say that on a live. But the actions undertaken, which were intended.
If he were in the Middle East, he would have been executed.
The actions he committed were at the very least treason. The actions of essentially every person that was in that mob amount to treason. The goals of that crowd were to kill Mike Pence, kill members of Congress, disrupt the official functions of government, and keep their choice as president by illegitimate means. That was the goal. It was not a party. It was not people playing in DC. It was an attempt to kill federal officials and install their president and keep him as president. When you have that level of coordination from the leader of that group, you do not have a situation with checks and balances. And not only on the president can no longer commit crimes ruling, but on the Chevron ruling, there's not really like the purpose of government. The outright purpose of government in America is being whittled down. It is not just the ability to serve that purpose, but the purpose of government is being whittled away at.
That's exactly right.
Let's talk about this Supreme Court ruling. Any thoughts on the fact that you can't prosecute a sitting president?
They legalized Watergate. They legalized Ulysses S. Grant running over that guy with a horse when he was drunk.
Yeah.
They legalized habeas corpus for President Lincoln during the Civil War, which I agree with. You know, I have no complaints on that one. But they have in effect made it where, quote Justice Sonia Sotomayor, if you want to call in SEAL Team 6 to go after a rival, that's legal for the president to do. Now, if you're in the military,
democracy.
No,
democracy.
No, it's over. American democracy as we know it, with that ruling, with everything that is outlined in the Project 2025 and that ruling, the combination of the two ends what we know as American democracy. And here's what's important for Black folks to really understand. Even before this, going back to the Fearless Fund, that whole piece of anything that smells like affirmative action, anything that smells like a set aside for Black folks, anything that can be seen as a discrimination to white people, they will end it. I make 70% of my clients are government contractors. That program is at stake. It will be, if all things remain constant, we will not have an 8A program. Look at whoever you work for. Anybody, any W-2 Black employees, who do you work for? I can guarantee you, if it's not a government, and I shouldn't even say that, any job, they have some type of affirmative action policy that says we need to hire more Black people, or at least a certain quota, a certain amount. All of those things will go away. We don't recognize what's really at stake with the combination of this presidential immunity, and you add that to the Project 2025, what we understand as American democracy will be no more.
Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, this is a ludicrous scenario to pose, but let's say former President Trump calls on the Ohio National Guard to go bother the Democratic National Convention. Is that not an official act? Granted, that'd be insane. I'm not saying I think that's the kind of thing I expect to happen next week, but the sheer levels that can go to, the hypotheticals were discussed as offhand as me and you talking about what pepperoni pizza.
You went there, Richard. What happens to the Black police officer, to the Black Navy SEAL, the Black Army Ranger, the Black sailor, the Black Air Force person? What happens when President Donald Trump orders them to bust a cap in Baltimore, West Baltimore, Prince George's County, Brooklyn, Harlem?
That's not a hypothetical. Hold on. You're not talking about a hypothetical, Donnie. What happened near the end of Trump's term during the pandemic? He called the goon squad on Portland. He was bragging in speeches about how the marshals went in and killed somebody who made threats online. That was under the previous ruling.
Yeah.
You're not talking about a hypothetical. You're not talking about a hypothetical. You're talking about how would somebody who already applied group military force on a city, how are they going to do it now that no matter what they ask anybody to do, not only can they get away with doing, but he can pardon you.
So
Richard, campaign centered on pardons.
Richard, what will the Black police officer, the Black military person do when ordered to bust a cap in his own family?
I hope that they stand down because it's an illegal order. I'll say that we are nearing the point where effectively military honor and military justice might be some of the last remaining pieces. If you are in the military and you're given an illegal order, even if you can be pardoned for it, you will be sentenced for it. That is one thing that I will say definitely about the U.S. military relative to ordinary justice. If you do an illegal act and you're arrested for it, you're going to face a tribunal or you're going to face a military court, and you are probably going to get in big trouble for it because they don't want to incentivize people doing wild, crazy shit. Okay, so while you're on that note, what will this country look like to China, to Russia, to North Korea, to what's it called? What's the 5 countries? Brazil, Russia, India. What's it called? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I don't know what the S is actually. Is the S South Korea? South Africa. Okay. You don't have to go super deep on foreign policy. Will it make America vulnerable? Will it make America vulnerable, Richard? More so than that. The Russians in Ukraine and likely in other parts of Eastern Europe, the Chinese in Taiwan, the North Koreans in South Korea, many of them. I mean, and I'm not going to say I encourage the U.S. to get actively involved in each of these measures actively, But on the question of, is Trump going to make us so isolationist that countries with ill intent choose to act? I believe that in full. The end of aid to Ukraine, the bolstering of aid to Israel, the general turning away from even the veneer of human rights as a American foreign policy goal. Not to mention, if the Supreme Court's already doing this shit, they're very likely going to let him do a third term and maybe more. And why not more?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, Byron. Byron, what happens to the black soldier, the black law enforcement officer, when ordered to turn on their own people, even members of their own family?
Yeah, I think we're at a point now where we have to identify what type of generation we are, because what we are, the norms of our past is getting ready to come to an end. So we have to identify who are we? Are we willing to sacrifice our jobs, our reputation with whoever groups for the purpose of representing for black folks, representing for American, what we know, or I should say what new as American democracy? The next generation will find out who we are as a nation, because all that we have identified as the comfort and comfortable, that is coming to an end. So we have to make ourselves anew. What is our new objective? And as Black Americans, we have to begin to speak with one voice, to get out of the divide and conquer and crabs in a bucket. That day, it was no room for that going forward. We have no choice.
We thought Harriet Tubman had to demonstrate courage. And what I hear you saying, Byron, is that our turn will come. Everybody gets a turn. That's what they say.
It's our turn.
That's what they say in East and West Baltimore. Everybody get a turn.
This is it.
Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I'm pulling for Joe. I kind of hope they don't remove my boy from the nomination without his consent, because I think that's a soft coup, and I don't want to encourage those. There's at least some discussion of Kamala Harris replacing him, and if she replaces him, I'll be as gung-ho for her as I am for him. I'm cool with more or less whatever national figure they put onto the ticket. And I do agree with the Center for Nonprofit that just commented. We've been in civil war in America, you could argue, at the very least since the Tea Party time. Now it is that the tactics are becoming more visible. Our opponents are more proud to state their hate and their goals. And they have a leader that is shameless, crooked, corrupt, as awful as it gets. And a lot of people do not fully grasp the difference between the two individuals who appear like they're going to be on the ballot.
That's exactly right. And I'll just say I'm proudly voting for Biden, primarily because if he does pass away within the next 4 years, Kamala would be the president. Would I rather Kamala over Trump as my president? 1,000 times yes. A poll
yesterday said that she had a better chance at beating Trump than does Biden.
Yep, she's polling better among people of color. She's polling better among independents. And most importantly, nobody blames her for what's going on in Israel. Many people blame Joe for that. Almost nobody blames Kamala for that. And I think that her opinion will be much better on what to do in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, because the rap that they put on Kamala, what has she done? There's no vice president who's ever been outside of the gate. Every vice president has to be quiet and go do ceremonial stuff, right? So
even Lyndon Johnson.
So that rap is crazy. She would be 1,000 times better than Trump. And listen, as the main point here is that Black people got to get to a point where we support Black people. We have to understand the value of our vote. We hold so much power in the vote. Now, granted, if we don't listen, all the stuff we outlined with this immunity piece and Project 25, that will be a direct attack at minimizing the potential of expanding the Black vote. So you can, all kinds of issues will come up where you can't vote and all that. So we got to know that's coming. but we have to get to the point where we begin to recognize that our vote is powerful. And if we vote as a collective, single our agenda, we can really make a difference here. But we got to do that. So,
I got to ask you for extra question. If Wes Moore is recruited, I'm hearing his name more and more, Wes Moore being recruited to run either now or in 4 years, do we as a Black community in Maryland have our next governor in mind? Or is the groundwork already laid for a Brooke Learman? And I say this because for the first time in our history in the state of Maryland, we have a Black governor, a Black attorney general, a Black treasurer. Unprecedented. What happens to that momentum? I don't know what Brooke Learman means to the Black community. I imagine some type of deal was cut for Wes Moore to win. Maybe she was a part of that deal. I know her dad has a lot of influence, but I'm talking about what happens to the momentum that has been established for Black people in a 30% Black state of Maryland. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Byron, you want to go first? Because my answer might be lengthy.
Yeah, because I got to jump off after this. That's a real thing. And I will say, because I'm focused on, I want Wes to be the best governor as possible so he can have a one-way shot to the White House. So what you're saying, Donnie, is a real thing. Looking long term, that's a real thing, because who's next?
It's the O'Malley syndrome. It's not mastering this station and already looking at the next. We need mastery over this situation.
That's right.
He'll move on. I'm happy for the country. What about us?
Understood. I agree. I will say though, let's just watch over the next 4 years. I mean, a 2-term Baltimore mayor has power. That's influence. So don't be surprised if we begin to see the rise of Brandon Scott to the next level. Don't be surprised.
A Brandon Scott for governor.
Don't be surprised. A 2-term Baltimore mayor, he has to run for governor, right? I mean, what else is he going to do after a 2-term Baltimore mayor elected? I mean, he has to. So I think a lot of times we look at Brandon and say, oh, this is a young boy, this, that, and the other. Listen, he has political clout. He has a record. He could stand his record on against anybody at this point, short of the current governor. So if I was his political supporter, and I would listen, get your mind right to prepare for the governorship.
The question you asked is who would become the governor.
No, will the Black agenda that we are finally seeing momentum on, will that continue?
I think that's actually going to increase, because a lot of the way for Wes to become governor was through the support of elected officials and by having lots of money. I think that in the upcoming race, there will be many more Black voters that are willing to vote for a Black candidate from the get-go, irrespective of the amount of money or the amount of support. I think that while Brooke Learman is a likely strong candidate for governor, I think that Aruna Miller might run for governor. I would not be surprised to see Anthony Brown run for governor. I think there's going to be just very contested battle for the Black electorate in Maryland. And pretty much we are going to decide all of the statewide offices for the foreseeable future. Do I know who it's going to be? Not necessarily, but I don't think that momentum is going to end. I think it's only ramping up. To what Irvin Reed said regarding Kamala Harris apologizing. I guess she should explain. But I mean, I also wanted Joe Biden to explain, and people didn't care, and they pulled for him. And now he's the president. And if he's the president, I'm cool with him. And if she's the president, I'm cool with her. I think we are past the point of people demanding the explanation for their past accomplishments, particularly when compared to the past accomplishments of not only the opposing candidate, but the opposing candidate's party. I would much rather them explain their accomplishments, their great achievements of the Biden-Harris administration on healthcare, on the environment, on employee safety, on employee earnings, on unions, on education, on judiciary, on so many more things. Joe Biden has been the most successful president since Lyndon B. fucking Johnson. People need to respect his record a lot more and talk more about his damn record.
Richard Deshae Elliott, Byron Deese. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, sir?
I'm about to eat a lamb gyro. Buy Donnie's book. Have a great day. Vote against Project 2025.
The book will be out. We're working on it. We had to do some things, but within the next 30 days, and as soon as I get that date, we'll be booking book signings both in Prince George's County and in Baltimore. Journalpreneur Richard Deshae Elliott is my editor. I'm very proud and very grateful for that work that you have done, Richard, and I do it again.
You're welcome. To many more, Donnie. Have a lovely day and don't melt in the heat.
Good morning, world.